This week we're going to look at a variety of different ways to factor polynomials. Next week we'll put them all together and create a strategy that'll help you to factor any polynomial. For right now, the first step whenever you're looking to factor is always to look to see whether there's a GCF that you can factor out. The GCF, which stands for greatest common factor, is the largest value that divides evenly into each of the terms of the polynomial. So if we're looking at the polynomial 6x to the fourth plus 9x squared, we need to figure out what the largest number and variable is that divides into each of the terms of the polynomial. The easiest way to do that is to take each of the terms and break them down into their factorizations. So 6x to the fourth can be rewritten as 2 times 3 times x times x times x times x. 9x squared, 3 times 3 times x. And when we're trying to figure out the GCF, we're trying to figure out every piece that is common between the two terms. So in this case, both terms have a 3 and both terms have 2 x's. So we multiply those all together, we get the greatest common factor, 3x squared. The next step is, what does it look like to factor the polynomial? Well, factoring is a process of rewriting an expression as a product, right? So anytime you're factoring, you're always going to finish with a product. If you don't have a product, you have not factored. So in this case, we want to factor 6x to the fourth plus 9x squared. We need to figure out what that's going to look like. Well, the factored form, when there's a GCF, is always going to look like that GCF that you found times the quotient. And you'll never actually think of it as a quotient, but that's really what it is. If we want to divide, or if we want to factor 6x to the fourth plus 9x squared, then we know that it's going to be 3x squared, because that's the GCF, times some piece that's left over. If we want to figure out what the piece is that's left over, we can go back to the last slide where we had 6x to the fourth broken down into its prime factorization, and 9x squared broken down into its prime factorization, and we can circle the 3x squared in both cases. What's left is the part that goes inside of the parentheses. So 3x squared times 2x squared, there's our 6x to the fourth, and 3x squared times 3, there's our 9x squared. One of the things that you have to remember is that factoring is a guess. You always are guessing. The better you get at it, the better your guess is. But in the end, it's always a guess. So you always need to check by multiplying. And remember, we multiply by using the distributive property. So in this case, 3x squared times 2x squared, there's our 6x to the fourth. And 3x squared times 3, there's the 9x squared. Make sure you always check your work.